tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello out there, everyone in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Rowdies Show, the portion of the RBLR Sports podcast that is dedicated to your Tampa Bay Rowdies. I am back from my vacation, and I am here with the guy who has helped fill in for me because he has been here for the last couple of weeks and took over as the full hosting duty. Carlos, how are you doing? And how are the last I guess I should say the last couple of weeks?
I'm doing great. You know, we're here to talk about the Rowdies, so I'll start with the Rowdies have been playing great, obviously. We're on that crazy unbeaten streak, which is so fun to see. I always love hearing the commentators talk about that and how it started with that game against Phoenix, which I still can't believe is going on. And Phoenix's downfall is just going bonkers right now. Always interesting to keep up with. So you've definitely missed a lot in these past couple of weeks with regards to USL. There's a lot going on in the league. Obviously, the Rowdies are still playing great. So not a ton new there. Hopefully that keeps up. But I wanted to ask you, James, how was the vacation? Anything cool happen while you were over there?
I gotta say, for anybody who was unaware, I don't think I posted this yet anywhere, but even before I go out to Germany, on the way there in the Tampa International Airport, I run into none other than Tyler Adams, captain of the U.S. national team.
Nice.
And I was like, oh my God, this is the best omen there could possibly be. And I'll tell you, it did lead to a very awesome trip. He was, very gracious. He took a picture, which at some point I'm going to have to post. But yeah, he was on our flight over there. I said good luck to him in Leipzig when we finally landed in Frankfurt, and it turns out he was on his way out of Leipzig over to Leeds United in the English Premier League, which is very exciting for me as a fan because he's going to get a lot of playing time there with a coach that knows him and trusts him, all that good stuff. But we're not talking about the U.S. men's national team today, so I'll leave that one be for another time. It was a really good trip, and that was one of the cooler things that was a part of it, even if I didn't have to leave the States for it.
That's awesome. That's so fun to hear. Yeah, me and Eureka have been holding it down here. Back on the home front, Eureka and Brett the week before that. So, yeah, we've been having a good time. Still talking Rowdies. Obviously, that's what we're here to do. So let's just hop into the review. Why don't we? Obviously, this past weekend, the Tampa Bay Rowdies came out with a 4-1 win versus Loudoun United. We also finally have a home game to preview coming up against Atlanta United 2 this weekend. Feels like it's been a little bit since that last home game, so always fun to talk about that. And before we hop into the review of this past game, make sure to follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. That's at RBLR Sports. And definitely like and subscribe to our podcast wherever you find your podcasts on all major podcast platforms. So with that being said, I really, really am excited to talk about this past weekend's game because it was fun. It was a little stressful at first, but we ended up with a 4-1 win, and let's dive into how that happened. So the game started, and we started with a kind of reversing back to that traditional 3 in the back formation that Neil Collins loves to play. It's the first time we've gone with that formation in a few games, as we've been playing with that 4 in the back formation over the past few games. We had CJ Cochran in goal, Aaron Guillen, Connor Antley, and Van Kazel made up the back line. Fun note here, Connor Antley's twin brother, I believe, Ian Antley, was on the bench. We've signed him to a 25-day contract, so we'll get into a little bit of that later. And Van Kazel subbed in here for Scarlett, who is serving his suspension after that late red card against Hartford last weekend. In the midfield, we had Armin, Hilton, Wyke, and Dalgard. And then making up the attack, we had Guenzati starting on the wing, his first start in a little while. And then Dos Santos as the center forward, and Leo Fernandez obviously had to be in there as the other winger. Loudoun definitely came out swinging. They played with a really quick tempo to open up the game. It's really trying to catch the Rowdies off guard, but our back line did eventually wake up, even though they started slacking a little bit early on, which forced CJ Cochran to make a couple really, really good saves to keep it level in the opening minutes. But the Rowdies obviously quickly settled in and began to control the tempo, possession, definitely created more dangerous scoring opportunities as the half went on. Loudoun occasionally would try to create something on the counterattack. They're a very speedy group, a very young squad. But our backline, I think, did a great job of keeping up with the pace of their young attackers. Loudoun's Zamudio was forced into some pretty decent saves, and he kept the score 0-0 going into the half. Now, as the second half opened up, Neil came out of the locker room making 2 early subs by his standards. Neil usually waits to make those subs until like later on, 60th, 70th minute. But coming out of the locker room, Neil took out Guenzati and put in Lacava, and took out Armin and replaced him with Dayonn Harris. Both Guenzati and Armin had a decent half, but Neil clearly seemed to want to inject some sort of more speed and penetration into our attack. Dayonn Harris would prove to be the crucial sub, getting involved in the attack early and often, keeping Loudoun on their heels. Eventually, that would culminate in 2 goals created by direct assists from Dayonn Harris, who got behind the Loudoun back line with his quickness to square balls to Lacava and Dos Santos, who would score their 10th and 2nd goals of the year, respectively. Now, the 3rd goal would come about 10 minutes later, as Greg dispossessed the Loudoun midfielder to create an opportunity where Lacava would find Fernandez, who really created this like weird goal where he was just kind of standing and swung his leg back, kind of like a standing finish in the box. A really, really pretty finish, kind of unconventional, but it resulted in a goal, his 10th goal of the year. Loudoun would finally capitalize on one of its counterattacks as Tyler Freeman would find a ball bouncing around the box and slot it past Cochran. That celebration wouldn't last long, though, as 3 minutes later, Dayonn Harris once again got involved in the attack, whipping in a cross that made Kyle Gregg, try and get a shot off, but the ball would bounce out wide. And ultimately, Sebastian Dalgard came in with one of his signature just first-time bangers right across the box past the Loudoun goalie to make it 4-1. Dalgard would score his 4th of the year with that goal, and the game would end up with a 4-1 win for the Rowdies. Yes, lots going on there. Lots to talk about in the second half. James, I know there's a lot to talk about. Why don't you hop in here with some of these questions? Because we have a lot to talk about, especially in that second half. So much at stake here.
Yeah, I haven't been able to listen to the episodes for the last 2 weeks because my cell phone over in Germany wasn't working too well. But I can say that I have looked at the box score for each of the last several games, including this one against Loudoun United, and I was definitely wondering. I think these games were roughly 1 a.m. for me there, so I didn't actually get to see any of them. But when I, for this one, I was home and I just couldn't make it in terms of being too tired from all the travel and everything.
Sure.
I woke up the next day like I had for the other games, and I checked the box score, and I was like, okay, 4-1. That sounds pretty good. That's the score. That's the results I want. Then I kept going, and I was like, wait, but why did it take so long? What was going on here? So let's start just there. Loudoun United stayed in this game for a while, it seems. And what changed in the second half that we apparently opened the floodgates on them?
Yeah, this was something I was thinking about for a while when I was rewatching the game. Obviously, the score going to half was 0-0. We were creating some good chances in the first half. It just seemed like the struggle was coming with that last touch. We weren't really penetrating behind the Loudoun back line like we did in the second half. We were getting there, maybe not shooting the ball as early as we should have, not really forcing Zamudio into any crazy saves. We were creating chances, though. We were getting some shots on target. Again, just nothing super dangerous that would, shoot that XG stat up to like 1 or whatever. And then in the second half, like I mentioned in the recap here, Neil Collins came out of the bench, or came out of the locker room, and brought in Lacava, and most importantly for me, Dayonn Harris, who I've been a huge advocate for more playing time for this man. Dayonn Harris is so talented and just has such a great IQ and vision of the field, and his quickness makes him so lethal on the wing. And I think that was the biggest thing to me. like if you go on Twitter, that's Dayonn Harris was the guy everybody was raving about. Like he didn't score the goals, but you would think he had like a hat trick against Loudoun, the way people were talking about him. And it
Gotcha.
was well deserved. I mean, he came in and he immediately started to make those chances happen. But the dangerous chances where he would get behind the back line with a little self pass, a little self touch around the Loudoun defenders, like that would come with that first goal and the second goal too. Actually, I mean, he assisted directly with both those goals. In the stat sheet, those goals will go to LaCava and Dos Santos respectively. But I mean, I would give more credit to Dayonn Harris because he single-handedly created those chances and made them really, really easy goals for both those players. I mean, if they missed those goals, that's what I would be talking about today. Like, if they missed those goals right in front of the goal, that would be a problem because Dayonn Harris set them up just so beautifully. And I think that was the biggest thing. I mean, he brought some speed to counter Loudoun's own speed because, again, Loudoun's a really young team, so they have a lot of quickness. But Dayonn has that quickness and ability to see the field and significant dribbling ability and great passing. So he kind of drew a lot more attention than Armin did in that first half, which, again, Armin played a decent first half. He was playing in good balls. He was creating decent chances. But Dayonn Harris just has that extra level of intensity, the extra level of quickness that I think Armin lacks a little bit, even though I think Armin has the better passing quality. But so, yeah, I think Dayonn Harris was the biggest thing and the biggest reason the floodgates started to open. Because as soon as we scored those first two goals, I mean, the last two goals would come not much later. Loudoun just kind of shut down. I mean, they had that confidence in them for a little bit because they kept us to a tight game, but eventually they just shut down and I think conceded to the fact that the Rowdies, just outmatched them and outplayed them on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, I am very heartened, though, to hear that Dayonn Harris is coming on and doing all this awesome stuff. That is something that I think you and I have been looking for a little while, especially, with him being out to injury as unfortunately frequently as it has been. I love when Dayonn Harris is out there and what he can do. He is like, a defender's worst nightmare in terms of not only the creativity, but then you also match that with some speed. And exactly. I would hate to be on the other side of it personally. So with all of that being said, now, what do you make of our attack in this game? Obviously, as I said, I did not get to see this game. I haven't even watched the highlights for as much as those have been out online. But 4 goals is a good result anytime that you, I guess, don't lose 5-4. But is that an accurate representation of our performance? Would you say?
I think the scoreline was a little. I don't want to say it was lopsided because we controlled the game. I mean, we dominated the game. There was never really a point where I take that back. Early on in the second half, Freeman for Loudoun, he was one of their strikers that they brought on as a sub. He was really, really good. I mean, this guy was creating chances that if CJ Cochran wasn't in goal, like if we had, I don't know, some not as good goalie, CJ Cochran was really shutting him down. When he could have put them up 1-0, 2-0 over us and changed the entirety of the game, really. But with that being said, we still controlled most of the game. We had more dangerous chances, obviously, and at the end of the day, more goals, which is what matters, right? I will say that I think 4 goals is a little generous for our attack. Like I said, Dayonn Harris kind of initiated a lot of that. And I think if we're playing, a mid-table or upper table team, they would have shut down some of these chances that ended up being really easy goals for us, right? So I think the 4 goals ends up coming out of the fact that, we played a really good game, obviously. But I think we played a game that was more deserving of like a 2-0 win, maybe a 2-1 win with that eventual goal that Loudoun would score. I think it comes down to the fact that we're playing a pretty inexperienced team in Loudoun, a pretty young team, and a team that's obviously towards the bottom of the table. But that's not to discredit any of what we did. We played a really good game, and again, so much credit to Dayonn Harris for creating those chances that would end up being, the goals that ultimately shut Loudoun down. Because once we finished those first 2 goals, I mean, they just kind of folded, and the opportunities that Freeman was creating for Loudoun weren't really happening in the same frequency. Because like I said, they were creating some good chances, and early on, like in the first half too, I think it was Diallo had a couple really, really good opportunities that, if it was any other defense, maybe a bottom table defense or a mid-table defense, opportunities that would have likely been finished. But I think our defense did a really good job of keeping up with their speed and ultimately keeping it level until, our attack turned it up and made it a lopsided victory at the end of the day.
I love that. I love to hear that. So I'm going to ask you to build upon what we've been talking about with Dayonn Harris here. He came on at halftime, and obviously, as you've been saying, he's injected some speed and some skill and some creativity into this game. But
yes.
That obviously changed our attacking approach from the first half. And the players who came off, we've talked about Sebastian Guenzati and Jake Arman a little bit here, but let's expand upon that for the audience, who in this case also includes a totally clueless me. What was Neil Collins' decision making with Sebastian Guenzati and Jake Arman? If you could channel him, which is definitely very difficult for us.
Yeah, if I could channel Neil Collins effectively, I'd have to be screaming at you, and I don't think anybody wouldn't I'd just be yelling at the top of my lungs. Neil Collins is so fun to watch on the field. He's one of the more entertaining coaches, and I think we all love him for that. So I've said a couple times, I think Guenzati and Arman, they were having good halves. They were having decent to good halves. I think Arman had a decent half. I think Guenzati had a good half. They play different styles than their substitutes, than LaCava and Dayonn Harris, both of which bring a little more speed into the lineup. Guenzati, he's 31 now, and he's not really a winger in the same way that LaCava is, even though he's playing in that position right now. He's more naturally a striker, I think, and like kind of where Dos Santos is. So I think LaCava, just for how the game was flowing and for this opponent in particular, I think LaCava was a good sub here. Because Loudoun is such a quick team, right? Because Loudoun is such a youthful team that can really just run up and down and run circles around you for a pretty good amount of time. I mean, I wouldn't say all 90 minutes, but sometimes it felt that way with how quick they are in the counterattack. And the same thing goes for their back line. I mean, their back line is very youthful too. So you need somebody like LaCava, like Dayonn Harris, who can dribble around and really penetrate that back line to create those dangerous opportunities. And Guenzati is, I think, more of a clinical finisher, more of a guy who will be in the right place at the right time if you put him at striker and center forward. So I think Neil Collins just, realized that pretty early in the game and wanted to make that change. So, we don't have to wait too long and end up with a really disappointing 0-0 result or some 1-1 result against this Loudoun team. And then I think the same goes for Arman, honestly. I think Arman is a great passer, a great distributor. And he plays really well on the wing from the back, right? Because he's kind of like a wing back, almost like a right mid, depending on how that formation's going. And Dayonn Harris, like I've said, he just is that different style of play that for Loudoun, I think matches up better than Arman's style of play. Maybe against, a team like Louisville, or I can't think of another team right now who has like some slower or more veteran fullbacks. Armin might be a better tactical choice because you don't really need to go at them with speed in the same way. Maybe you're looking for the clinical pass, which Armin can bring. And I think he's better at that than maybe Dayonn Harris would be. But I think for this game in particular, it was just tactical. I don't think Neil saw Guenzati and Armin's play and said, these guys are playing bad. I think he just saw LaCava and Dayonn Harris on the bench and said, you know what, maybe these are the guys that are going to be the better tactical matchup here. And he was right at the end of the day, obviously. Like I can't give Dayonn Harris enough praise. And this is probably spoiling who I think my man of the match is, right? But he had a great game and matched up just incredibly against these poor Loudoun fullbacks. Like they had no chance. They really didn't.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like it was a very fair fight, I will put it.
No, for sure.
But
for sure.
This is very interesting because I have been, tracking it for the last couple of weeks away. And then previously, we were watching every game week in, week out. Obviously, you and I were, and we were trying to figure out exactly what was going on with Sebastian Guenzati.
Yeah.
Sebastian Guenzati is, regardless of how this season ends, regardless of how his whenever his contract with the Rowdies ultimately does come to a close, and that might be this season, it might not be. I can't even, I don't want to think about anything like that at this moment. But all I mean to say here is that regardless of when he does ultimately leave, he will be a club legend here. This season, though, has been very difficult for him, I think, on a personal level. And, we haven't had too many chances to talk to him or, too many chances to ask about specifically Sebastian Guenzati. But where do we see him kind of on the depth chart here? Because he got the start in this game. You have to consider, of course, who the Rowdies are playing, and that's Loudoun United, who, as you've already said, not a great team, not doing so well, probably not exactly the team that you are going to have the hardest time scoring against, like the Rowdies ultimately did not in the second half. But he wasn't even on for those goals in this game. So what are we thinking about, what it's looking like for him at the moment?
This is something I've been thinking a lot about too. Especially, I see a lot of talk, not a lot. I see some comments on like the Rowdies Facebook, which is sometimes just such a cesspool. It's so funny to go in there and see what people are saying on the Rowdies Facebook page. There's been some disagreement between like Rowdies fans about, what Guenzati's role is this season. I'm of the opinion that, he's being played like, again, I'm not trying to say like I have the answers and Neil Collins is wrong here. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I just think like him playing so much on the wing, which has kind of been his role recently, it's not really like what he does. It's not ever really been his position. Last season before, he's been our striker, one of two strikers, a center forward, whatever. He's been playing, with Dos Santos up top, in that two striker formation that we've had a couple times last season, or by himself as the main striker. But this season, it seems almost like he's been like, especially at this point in the season, it seems like he's been adapted as like a backup winger for Jake LaCava, who is obviously scoring a ton of goals, playing really well. And LaCava deserves to be starting for sure on that left wing, with Leo Fernandez as his counterpart on the other wing. Those guys have been tearing it up. Guenzati should, like, his natural position, I think, is where Dos Santos is. I think I'm right in saying that. And if we compare Guenzati to our strikers, who are Dos Santos and Kyle Gregg, Dos Santos and Gregg both have 2 goals each at this point in the season. Guenzati has 1 goal, and he's been playing not a ton. So I don't think that it's like crystal clear that Dos Santos should be like our starting striker, or that Guanzati shouldn't be playing at the striker position anymore because we have Dos Santos and we have Kyle Gregg. I think he's just the more adaptable of the three like main strikers we have in Dos Santos, Gregg, and Guanzati, because he's a little bit quicker than those other guys than Gregg and Dos Santos, so he can play on the wing. I just don't think it's his natural position. But because we have this depth, which is a good thing, I think he's been having to, when he does get playing time, it ends up being as the second winger, kind of the backup winger. Does that mean he should be starting instead of Dos Santos more or at all? Maybe he just takes this role for the rest of the season. I don't know. I mean, we can't really get inside Neil Collins' head. I haven't had a chance to ask him any questions tactically or about his tactics this season, about his strategy. So that's something I've been curious about. And if I have a chance to ask him about that, I definitely would like to, because I'm really curious about what Guanzati's role going forward for the rest of the season will be. Because obviously we're scoring a lot of goals. But I wouldn't say those goals are coming because of Dos Santos or because of Gregg. They're coming because Leo Fernandez and Jake LaCava are having just fantastic seasons.
Right.
At the same time. Like they're both having like MVP seasons, but like at the same time for the same team on opposite side of the wings. So they're really the catalyst for this. And I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to put Guanzati where Dos Santos would be for a game and see how that plays out, because that just hasn't been the case this season. Like we haven't really seen that since like early on in the season. So I think that's something to ask Neil about. We don't know what he wants to do with Guanzati's role going forward. But this is Carlos's opinion from the sideline, from the couch. Maybe that's something to try. And again, like we're going to talk about Atlanta United too in a little bit here, but again, not a great team. If we're going to experiment a little bit, and I'm not saying we should like experiment, that's a strong word.
Right.
If we're going to try something here, like with the strikers, because again, our strikers aren't really scoring a lot of goals, like, and we're still scoring a lot of goals. Like it's a really weird thing that's going on. But it's just because of Fernandez and LaCava having just MVP seasons right now. So yeah, maybe that's something to try against Atlanta here. And I don't think it will. I don't think that'll happen. I think maybe Kyle Gregg might get the start. But if I'm in Neil's shoes, that would be something I'd personally love to try. Because I think Guanzati just, has that talent and that natural knack of being that goal scoring striker, not a winger. So sorry, that was long-winded, but I think it's a really interesting thing to think about going forward, because he's such a club legend, right? That people don't expect to be sitting on the bench or coming in for the last 15 minutes every game. So yeah, something to look ahead, something to look forward to, something to think about going forward, and definitely something to think about going into this weekend against Atlanta.
Absolutely. I would personally love to see him out there too, just as a follow-up to what you said. One more question about this game, and obviously Loudoun is not a good team at this level. I think that we can concede that point, but it should also be noted that they're not bad players by any means. They're very talented. They are just younger for the most part. There are players who are in DC United's youth academy, or they're players who are just out of college, what have you. But they're obviously all trying to make an MLS roster, and most of them are on the cusp of doing that. How did we do defending against their youthful speed, I guess? Obviously, when you're young, you're usually the fastest that you're ever going to be. So, how did we do defending against that? And I'm assuming a lot of creativity that comes with it, because when you're a young player, you certainly love trying some tricks.
No, I mean, I mentioned this earlier. I think our defense had a really good game. Well, sorry, I'm not gonna say a really good. I think we had a good game. We had a pretty good game. I think really good, saving that for like a shutout against Phoenix Rising, or sorry, the 1-goal game against Phoenix Rising or whatever.
Yeah, that's fair.
But against Loudoun, we let in 1 goal. but like if we look back at Loudoun's past results, I mean, this is a team that is capable of scoring a lot of goals against good teams. They scored 4 goals against Phoenix at home, which was just a shock, even though Phoenix isn't having a great season. They score a lot of goals because they're so quick, because they're so like individually talented. It's the thing with Loudoun is that it's not a really like cohesive unit. It's just, I mean, as a kind of reserve team, it's just not what they are. That's not what they're built for. It's a lot of individual talent and like really good individual talent too. I mentioned Freeman a couple times. I mean, this guy came in the second half and was just tearing it up with his speed and his dribbling. He took on like 2 of our midfielders and 1 defender, and I'm forgetting who they were. Maybe it's just not to embarrass them by like, because I'm pretty sure this kid's like 16 or something like that. And he was tearing it up. But we kept up with their speed, and I think that was the biggest factor that kept the game, level until we broke it open. So I think that was the biggest thing. I'm very impressed by our backline's speed, which I don't think they have a chance to show off too much because it's kind of because we kind of possess the ball so much against other opponents. And I guess because we're such a good team in the midfield, like they don't have to run up and down the field usually. But against Loudoun and against their counterattacks, Guillen, Antley, Van Kazel, I mean, these guys had to sprint across the field. They were sprinting. I think they were running more than they ever had this season. Because of that individual talent, because of Loudoun's individual speed. So I think that was the biggest thing. And then even when Antley came off because of that injury, and Wyke had to drop back into the back line after playing a whole half and some of running around in the midfield, Wyke was able to keep up with these kids on the back line, running around the field, doing his thing. And he had a great game on the back line when he had to rotate back there. So if I had to give him a rating, I would give an A-. Just really, really impressive from them. And again, the speed was the biggest thing that I was impressed by. It just seemed like we got caught lacking a little bit on those counterattacks. And like I think there was ways to avoid having to full sprint across the field to prevent a counterattack in the first place. Maybe position ourselves a little bit better, knowing that Loudoun's going to be, sprinting away with their speed on the counters. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter because we kept up with them. And Aaron Guillen in particular was somebody who I was impressed by. I mean, this guy he's a pretty big guy. He's not super young. He's like 30, I think 29 or 30. He was keeping up with the 18, 20-year-olds on the attack. So really impressed by him and the entire back line. And I think it's going to bode well for us going forward that obviously they are such staunch defenders and they can, get stuck in and play physical. But when they need to pick up the pace and be quick against these younger teams, they can do that. And again, we'll talk about Atlanta in a little bit, but that's going to bode well for us against the young Atlanta United 2 team this week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have one final question about this, and then I'm going to turn it over to you to do your man of the match, because I'm just going to have to go by your man of the match choice here. But there was a player who actually made his Rowdies debut. Is that correct? Is there a certain brother to our beloved Connor Antley who might be a useful tool in our toolkit for the rest of this? Well, at least the rest of this month, I should say.
Yeah. You'd be right. I mean, Ian Antley came in the last few minutes of the game. It's so weird because they look so freaking similar. Like, it's so strange. It's crazy. Like, I put it out on Twitter the day we announced that 25-day contract. It's a good thing we have numbers on the back of jerseys because these guys look really like, I mean, they're brothers for a reason, right? But yeah, Ian Antley came into the game and, we announced his 25-day contract a few days ago. Really good to see him on the field. I actually had no idea that Connor, I've seen his brother at the games before. I had no idea that he had been he is a professional soccer player. Most recently having played with Richmond, but dealing with some pretty severe injuries, working his way back. In the article where we announced, or in the release, the press release that we announced, the signing on of Ian Antley, it had said that he's been training with the team for a little bit now. So, I mean, it's really cool to see him on the field personally. I think it's pretty cool, and you know, especially with Scarlett's suspension for this week, which I think will be done by this upcoming game. It was a direct red card. Maybe that's 2 games. I'm not totally sure, actually. But especially with Connor Antley, kind of dealing with that lingering injury and aggravating that a little bit this week, we might have to see Ian Antley step in this weekend. But in this game in particular, I actually, again, going back to Twitter, I put this out on Twitter that my final thought was, I'm impressed by Ian Antley. And you might say, like, what? He played like 4 minutes. And I was like, but those were the most electrifying 4 minutes I've ever seen from a defender in my life. Like, this guy was playing with serious intensity. He was playing like he had something to prove. He's back on the field after the injury, and he just looked like ready to go. I mean, he was electric. He was playing with so much like aggression and intensity. He had tossed these poor Loudoun kids to the ground a couple times just with his body, and the ref had to come over and be like, dude, we're in stoppage time. You're up 4-1. Like, calm down. Like, there's no reason for you to be playing with this much aggression.
He's earning that contract.
Yeah, and I was all for it. I loved those 4 minutes, and I'm really curious to see his role going forward. Because I think he impressed me personally, and I'm sure he's been impressing Neil Collins in training and whatnot to get that temporary contract. So I don't know, maybe, what do you think, James? Do you think we could be looking at a longer term contract in the future if he proves himself here?
Well, based on what you've said, it sounds like he's certainly aiming for that personally. I would definitely like to get some actual minutes where I can see him too, and I'm hoping that will be this weekend, because it's one thing if a player has gone in and out of the game for whatever reason other than injuries. I think with injuries it's just so difficult, because if you have a long-term injury, and let's say you're playing for a Premier League team, let's say you're playing even in Holland, something like that, they will have a staff there that is able to rehab you for up to a year if you like tear an ACL or something like that. At this level, it's just very difficult to keep people on their payroll, and you're paying for rehab, and you're paying for rehab for a professional athlete. So it's not like you're just going to, I don't know, whatever I would do down the road if I broke my ankle or something like that. But I think that if he is anything like his brother, he's probably going to be a very competitive guy. Obviously, you were talking about him knocking, these kids down to the ground, and I think I've seen Connor Antley do that in a couple of games against MLS reserve teams. But I think that if he can work his way back from injury, he definitely was a good player in the USL League One when he was there previously. I do know him from his time there. I believe that he also got a couple of awards similar to Connor Antley. So I think that hopefully he can use this as the stopgap, like this 25-day contract. I mean, use this as the stopgap to get himself into the good graces and maybe earn a longer contract and get some consistent playing time. And I would personally love to see that, not only because we all love Connor Antley, but because I just hate when players are injured and it ruins their career like that. There was this player for a while named Josh Gatt, who was a huge prospect for the U.S. men's national team. He was playing for Man United legend Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at his club in Norway, and then he tore his ACL, and he started to come back, and then he tore the other ACL, and he started to come back again after 2 of them, and he tore it a third time, and it's just like, man, that's awful luck, and I hate seeing that kind of stuff. So if I don't know exactly what Ian Antley's injury problems were, but if he can come back from whatever they were to this, I would love to see it just on the personal side as well. That is really cool. But let's move on from that. Carlos, I'm going to turn it over to you very quickly here to just tell me who your man of the match was, and I will say, oh yes, I totally agree. That is a very good choice, and I base that on everything that I know about how it went.
Yeah. I mean, I spoiled it earlier. It has to be Dayonn Harris. I mean, it was so fun to watch him come in and just tear it up. He was the right sub. And I guess I'll give partial man of the match to Neil Collins too for making the sub earlier than he usually does. Yeah, he came in and just let it rip. Honestly, he was getting behind the Loudoun back line. He was just, I don't know. It's one of those things where he came in and quickly made an impression on that Loudoun midfield and defense, to where they had to pay extra attention to him every time he touched the ball, ultimately freeing up some space in the midfield for other guys, and obviously, leading to a few goals. And on our last goal, the fourth goal, he won't get the assist for that Dalgard goal, which was so beautiful. But that cross, like the reason the ball ended up over there on Dalgard's left foot was because of the Dayonn Harris cross, which Kyle Gregg got a little bit of contact on. And then the ball, ended up on Dalgard's foot, and just beautiful goal. But I think this will be the first time in a while that I don't actually give the man of the match to one of our goal scorers, because it was 4 different goal scorers, all of who played a good game. But it just seems like, Dayonn was the reason that there were several different goal scorers, right? I mean, he's not going to score all the goals from the wing back position, but he created them, and he created a lot of them in his short time on the field. So it has to be Dayonn, and for those reasons, I'm taking him as my man of the match.
And that will be a shared RBLR sports choice for man of the match.
Ooh,
for all of the listeners. So I will do. I will take a moment here to say, while I was out in Germany, I was missing one thing. I was not able to hear my RBLR sports podcast. I couldn't hear not only the Rowdies one to catch up with, where our team was, but with the Rays, the Bucks, the Lightning, the Bandits. It was not okay because, my phone is also broken right now. I need to fix it. It wasn't just that there was a problem with, the service over in Germany or anything like that. People obviously do use cell phones. But one way that I could have kept myself in touch with the RBLR sports crowd is, liking and subscribing is free. But if you can't do that and you can't access your podcast like I could not, please, next time, think about getting some new threads so that you can support our podcast, and head over to shop.rblrsports.com and check out all of the designs that we've got cooked up there. That is one way that I can stay in touch with RBLR Sports wherever I go. And let all the German people, let all the good German folks know where they should turn if they're possibly interested in the Tampa Bay sports scene. I know that there are a lot of German tourists that come to Florida. So if they get interested, they could possibly look and see, what else we have there, and get tuned into the podcast by wearing our stuff. So if you would like to do that, please go check it out there. Again, that's shop.rblrsports.com. There will be a link in the description. And if you would like to get something, use the promo code COYR for 10% off. That goes to everybody, not just our German listeners, as numerous as I'm sure they are. So, Carlos, I will turn it over to you here for the standings. And if it's all right with you, I will take the preview for Atlanta United, since I haven't had too much to say about the last couple of games so far.
Sounds good, James. Let me just hop into the quick review of the standings here. Your Tampa Bay Rowdies are now in second place in the Eastern Conference.
Let's go.
The Louisville City. I don't know why I was about to say the Louisville City. I think the Miami FC bit is stuck in my head. Louisville City beat Memphis this past weekend to increase that gap with Memphis, and ultimately dropping Memphis to third place below us, and increasing Louisville's lead at the top in first place. So Louisville's ahead of us by 3 points now. They have 42 points and we have 39 points. Memphis is right behind us with 38 points and the game in hand. Pittsburgh has 34 points in fourth place. Detroit City has 34 points in fifth place. And Birmingham Legion rounds out the sixth spot with 32 points, followed by the Miami FC and FC Tulsa in the seventh and eighth spots. Going over to the Western Conference, San Antonio continues their really, really impressive run of form. they're just playing really good soccer right now. There's not much else to say about that. They have 43 points. They have 14 wins, 1 draw, and only 3 losses this year. But now that I think about it, the Rowdies only have 3 losses, so whatever, not that impressive. Second place, you have the Colorado Springs Switchbacks with 39 points, followed by San Diego Loyal with 34 points, New Mexico United also with 34 points, and then El Paso Locomotive right behind them with 33 points. Interesting note here, though, El Paso has actually played 3 more games than New Mexico United. Really strange to see them having played that many more games. I feel like it's kind of rare, but that's the situation over in the Western Conference with LA Galaxy 2 in the 6th spot, Sacramento in the 7th spot, and Las Vegas Lights in the 8th spot. Really interesting to see LA Galaxy 2 kind of in the mix for a playoff spot here in 6th place. That's kind of a random development, but good for them. And yeah, I mean, Sacramento is the team that's representing us in the USL semifinals, or sorry, in the US Open Cup semifinals, but apparently there's 6 better teams than them in the Western Conference. So USL supremacy is all I have to say.
Yeah.
Looking ahead to that Open Cup game.
Yeah, I would love to see them do well and continue to carry the flag for the league. I think it's been over 20 years now since the Rochester Rhinos did it as a lower division team. So let's go, Sac Republic. I will support you only in that arena and not when we face you at any point during the league season. So let's get into our preview now against Atlanta United 2. They are on level with points with Loudoun United. So, not so great, unfortunately, for them. But that does mean probably a good week coming up for us. They've conceded 15 goals in their last 5 games and 30 in their last 10 games. Again, not good for them, but probably good for us. And I'm hoping that it turns out that way. Their top scorers are Jackson Conway and Tristan Traeger. They have 6 goals apiece. Jackson Conway is an academy product in Atlanta United. He plays for the first team occasionally. He's obviously mostly on loan with Atlanta United 2. And Tristan Traeger is a player who is just out of college. If I'm not mistaken, he was with Army. It also could be Air Force or Navy. I guess I'm a little lackluster on my coverage of Tristan Traeger, but he was one of the better players coming out of college, whichever military school it was that he went to. This is a team that, similar to Loudoun United, they can definitely score a lot of goals if they catch your team lacking, and they will try to do so, of course. But we did pretty well with them last time. It is another speedy team that we'll have to keep up with on the counterattacks, just like in the previous game, and I'm hoping that we can do so, of course, here too. With that being said, we are the 3rd game in a 3-game road trip for them, so that's going to make even worse news, most likely, for them. That has included a 2-1 loss and a 5-0 loss at Tulsa and San Antonio, respectively. So, yeah, everything is kind of stacking up against them, and I'd be really upset, in all honesty, if we don't end up getting a win here. Given their knack for conceding lots of goals and our high recent scoring streak, I think that we could be in for lots of goals here for ourselves. And if we play our game, obviously, then we are ready to go, and we can beat them into the dust against a hapless team, which is, I don't know how good that is or isn't for these kids who are 16, 17, 18 years old. I've never been in that situation, obviously. I'm sure that it sucks to lose week in, week out, but maybe, if you take enough lumps, then you can learn enough lessons along the way that you're ready to play for Atlanta United in MLS. I really couldn't tell you, but let's just move on from that. We're going to go into our predictions here. And Carlos, you tell me where you're leaning towards, and I'll tell you where I'm going.
Yeah, I'm going to take I think you summed it up best. They're conceding a lot of goals. When I was putting together some stats on their last few games, and I saw that they'd conceded 15 in their last 5, 30 goals in their last 10. Like, that's like surprisingly very linear. I'm not even a math guy, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. Like, they're conceding 3 goals a game on average over their last 10 games. Against teams from all across the spectrum, bad teams, good teams, mid-table teams, whatever. So I'm going to stick with that, math here. I'm not even good at math, but it seems pretty consistent. So I'm going to take a 3-0 win for us here. I think, it should be a pretty, I don't want to say easy win. No game is easy, but I think like Loudoun, this is a team that if we don't pick up a win against, it would be pretty disappointing, especially at home. I can't get that result against Charleston out of my mind, that 1-1 draw against Charleston from a few
Yeah.
weeks ago at home. Yeah, I mean, those games are the ones that haunt you. Like, no matter how good you're playing, or no matter how well you're playing, I mean, dropping easy points, like the games that should be a given are the ones that haunt you at the end of the year when you're a couple points behind first place. So this is the game that, we have to win. Because if not, we'll look back and be like, what happened? Why are we not in first place? Why are we a couple points behind Louisville at the end of the year? Yeah, not to be dramatic, I'm like stretching it out to like the end of the season. It's just another regular season game. But I mean, yeah, because of that, I'm taking a 3-0 win, and yeah, we should win pretty comfortably. Is all I have to say on that.
Well, I like your mathematical point there, and I am also going to take a scoreline by which we win with a 3-goal advantage. However, what I'm going to do is choose the Mitch Loster standard and our last week win 4-1 to the lads. Everybody knows it. I am going to, like I said, steal one from Mitch Loster and go again with that scoreline here. So, yeah, that is what we'll do. That is where we'll leave it with the preview, but we got a couple more things to shout out here.
Yes. The one more thing segment, my favorite time of the podcast. I want to give a shout out to Rio Hope Gund, who for most people probably that's not like not much significance. But he started for Loudoun this past week, and he was actually a senior while I was a freshman at Georgetown, a couple seasons ago now. So it's really cool to see some of the guys that I wrote about for our news magazine up there in the sports section, some of the guys that, we kept up with in the college soccer level, national champion with Georgetown soccer. So good to see him kind of finding his way in the professional ranks of U.S. soccer. Although, I mean, he, like, again, not to kind of diss Loudoun United, but he's better than Loudoun United, and he definitely deserves to be get more time with that DC United squad, who is not doing too hot anyway. So why not give him a chance? He's gotten some playing time with them already. But yeah, definitely expect to see this name, Rio Hope Gund, in the upper ranks of U.S. soccer real soon. He's just such a talented defender. He's huge, and he's really quick for his size. So really cool to see him getting some playing time in the professional ranks.
Well, excuse me, not we, but DC United have a new coach right now in a certain Mr. Wayne Rooney. So if he can impress the big Shrek coach that they've got up there, then hopefully he can get some more playing time, because Wayne Rooney knows talent when he sees it. as much as I throw out little nicknames for him. But yeah, I would love to see Rio Hope Gun do well. That was a really good Georgetown team. I remember watching them. And I think that I remember a couple of other players went professional, but we won't go down that road for right now. There are a couple of other things to note with the Rowdies specifically. Raiko Arozarena has gone out on loan, and I think that this took everybody by surprise. If you're like me, I was not expecting it, but yeah, he went out on loan to Forward Madison out in Wisconsin, and they sent to us on loan, I guess, who was their usual starting goalkeeper, Phil Brano. And Raiko went out. He started his first game of the season. He got a shutout. I believe that he got onto the team of the week for USL League One. I mean, Carlos, what do you make of this? I was, like I said, very, very surprised by this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say I was like, I think I was surprised just because, like, we don't really loan out too many players, like, historically. It's just not something the Rowdies have done too often. So anytime there's a loan, I mean, it's kind of surprising. Timmy Mel obviously is out in Chattanooga. I think the Raiko loan makes sense. Like, I think it was only surprising again because it was a loan, because we just don't do that too often. But it really makes sense for him because CJ Cochran has solidified his spot here as a starter, I think, for now. He's very consistent, and Raiko, for all the talent he has, would be riding the bench most of the season at this point. Pending CJ Cochran's good health throughout the rest of the year. So I think it makes sense for Ryko's development. And I think it's good for the Rowdies too if he stays here. And CJ Cochran is technically on loan. If he ends up, back in OKC, if they still exist next season. And Ryko comes back, he'll come back a better player because of his time in Madison, Wisconsin. Because USL League One is still a very competitive and talented league. It's a good division, and he's playing against good talent. And he's going to be playing a lot more over there than he would here. So good for him. And again, selfishly for the Rowdies, I think it's great that he will be developing more as a player and hopefully coming back to us, an all-star goalie or something like that. And it was against a good team too. He picked up that shutout against Tormenta FC, who we actually
slouches.
Yeah, no, Tormenta is always a really good team and always in the mix for the title in League One. We always struggle with them in the preseason games for some reason. Yeah, so good for Ryko, good for him being the team of the week.
Yeah, I am. I'm happy, like you said, for him to get playing time. I think that he is happy about that too, based on what he wrote on Instagram or Twitter. I forget which one, but yeah, it's going to work out to his and our ultimate benefit. Another player who's doing very well in USL League One is our other loanee there, Timmy Mel. He put in a good performance for Chattanooga, and he was also a member of the USL League One Team of the Week. So, all of this is very exciting. I think for us, Connor Antley was a consistent player at this level before he moved up to Indy 11 and now to us. Ian Antley was another very good, consistent player. So it's not like there isn't talent down there that we can benefit from. And it certainly isn't the case that players going down there are not going to get challenged. I think that we are looking at something, maybe not a pipeline necessarily. I don't want to go ahead and create some ideal that we probably can't live up to in that term. But if we can get some players some extra playing time and they can come back to us a more well-rounded player, then hey, all the best for us and the team that is currently benefiting, whether that's Forward Madison or Chattanooga Red Bulls. For sure.
I hope this is something that continues to be a trend in the future for us, because again, it's good for us selfishly. Like, we have these players, like, let's say a 2-year contract, right? If they're just not playing here, they're going to get better somewhere else in League One or whatever. And they can come back to us better player and play out their second year of that contract here in Tampa Bay. And who knows? I mean, like you said, Connor Antley made a lot of teams of the week in USL League One, and now he's over here, an all-star for us. And Timmy Mel's made a couple teams of the week now in USL League One. Maybe he comes back to us, a Connor Antley, because he's a talented guy too, Timmy Mel. And he could definitely be valuable. I was surprised that he wasn't getting too much playing time earlier this year because we were lacking so much depth defensively, and he still wasn't playing that much. But yeah, I definitely expect him to grow a lot more as a player in League One than he would here, based on how little playing time he was getting.
Exactly.
But yeah, so this will be good for us down the line. And like I said, I hope it's something we continue to do with players that just aren't getting too much action.
Yep. Same for me. So I think now the only thing that I want to say is tonight the U.S. women's national team go in the final against Canada for the CONCACAF W Championship. It's going to be a very good game because Canada just won the Olympics. I can't say whether or not I'm going to be able to make it up. I'm going to try. I obviously told you this weekend has been very, very unrested for me because I'm just constantly tired with the change in time. But if I can, I would like to catch this team. If you can, please stay up and watch them. If they win this game, they automatically qualify for the Olympics as opposed to having to go through a playoff. They've already qualified for the World Cup, which we all love to hear. But cheer them on because they deserve it, and they're also doing very well right now. So that is going on, and there's also, the UEFA Women's Euro, the African Women's Cup of Nations, the Copa America Femenina. It's a very cool time for anyone who is interested in the international women's game.
Yes,
Anyway,
yes.
now with all of that being said, that should do it for tonight. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you doing so every week, whether that's me or Carlos or Eureka. Everybody who stepped in while I was gone, and we will have to fill in, of course, when other people are out in the future. Hopefully there aren't too many other trips that we all have to miss out on. But in the meantime, I want to say, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Whether or not we're on here, there will always be stuff online. You can do that at RBLR Sports. If you do want to get at me anyway, I am on Twitter mostly, and I am at RBLR James K. Carlos, what about you?
I am on Twitter, and I spend too much time on Twitter, so maybe I'll take a break this week. But I'm there at Carlos TPA10. I forgot to play my favorite game while doing these podcasts. What have I been tweeting about? Nothing crazy, just Rowdies. Ian Antley, how much fun he is. So yeah, come over. Have a great time. Maybe learn a bit about Georgetown basketball. Been tweeting a lot about them because we picked up another big recruit.
Nice.
Hopefully we win a conference game and don't go 0-for-21 like we did last season. Who knows? But yeah, at Carlos CPA10, the place to be is what many are saying.
And you can also use the hashtag AskRBLR if you have any questions. We do love getting questions from you guys. We haven't been plugging that quite as much this year, but let's get back to it. Give me some questions. Give Carlos some questions. Give Eureka some questions if you have any for him. But yeah, let's get back into that, and we love taking them and answering them for you because it is another way that we can engage with our listeners. So the other thing that I will say now, please like and subscribe to our podcast. We are on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple, and Google Podcasts. We are on YouTube. Even we are on all major podcast platforms. If you want to hear us in a place, we are there. And if you can't find us, let us know. Eureka will help us out, just like he did while I was out in Germany. So for my return to the show and for another week against an MLS reserve team, I want to say, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.